All right. Okay. So, good afternoon, guys. This is Mrs. Walker. We are going to continue our reading of Mrs. Doyle is Out of Control. Miss Dole is Out of Control. This is the first book in the series, My Weird School Days, where the weirdness never stops. It's a great series by Dan Gutman. And we, I think, are on chapter 9. We will finish up today. And so far, our main characters, AJ and gang, AJ and Ryan and his friends, they are in second grade and they are graduating second grade and going to third grade. Mrs. Doyle was just elected. She's Ryan's mom, was just elected as PTA president, and she's in charge of this graduation thing. And she has gone a little out of control so far. They finally had graduation on the last day of school, and they had to come back. Even after school was over that night, they had to come back, and they're doing it on the playground. And so far, they have had President Clinton speak to them. And then now the helicopter flew overhead and purple smoke started pouring out from underneath the stage. The sounds of drums pounded in the speakers and laser beams shot out every place. Suddenly, two guys jumped out of the helicopter and ran on stage and started dancing around. They were wearing football jerseys and baseball caps, and the other guy hopped out of the helicopter and ran on stage. He had on a baseball cap, too. He was wearing a big purple cape with sequins all over it. It was Mr. Hyde, our old music teacher. Chapter 9. Mr. Hyde was the coolest guy in the history of the world. He used to be a plain old music teacher, but then he went on American Idol and now is a famous rapper. Mr. Hyde's homeboys started yelling into the microphones. And now, appearing live in person at Elementary School 1 and only Jam Master Hyde, the one man funky groove machine. Give it up, y'all. Mr. Hyde is in the house. The drums got louder and the lights got brighter. Yo, what's up, homies? Mr. Hyde shouted. Put your hands together. I'm going to rock your world. So get on your feet. The only way to get down to this, get up. If down is to get up. We all stood up and started clapping. Mr. Hyde danced around and he threw off his purple cape and started rapping. All right, so here's the picture of Mr. Hyde. And here's the rap. Forgive me, I will not do it justice. Now, my name is I'm here to remind summer is here and it's time to unwind. Word on the street is you're graduating, so I dropped in for some congratulating. You're getting so big, moving up to third. I bet you think you've got it all made. Well, let me give you a little advice. You better not be naughty. You better be nice. You better brush your teeth. Here's the real deal. You better wash your hands before you eat your meal. You better clean your room and you better be kind. Don't stare at the sun unless you want to go blind. Better mind your manners and stay out of danger. Don't tease your brother or take candy from a stranger. Early to bed and early to rise. Don't touch the paint until it dries. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but don't let killer robot clones. Now you're here and you're really trying to rap and you sit where you are and you're counting cap. Some days you'll feel sad and some days you'll feel happy. Some nights you'll feel mad and some nights you'll feel crappy. But I ain't jiving and I ain't jesting. That's just what life makes life interesting. Anyway, that's what I've got to say on this graduation day. You kids are cool. You're in the groove. Now it's time to bust a move. Everybody was going crazy. One of the guys in the marching band gave President Clinton a saxophone and he started playing it. And Mr. Hyde danced around and drummed on Mr. Klutz's head like a bongo. Mr. Hyde was out of his mind. Finally, Mr. Hyde and President Clinton climbed into the helicopter and flew away. Can you imagine what chaos for a second grade graduation? That had to be the end of it. Now we were going to get our diplomas and eat cake. But no, Mrs. Doyle raised her arm and a million white doves went flying up in the air. It was amazing. I was glad I had a square on my head just in case the doves pooped. Mrs. Doyle was out of control. Where did all the doves come from? I asked Ryan. Rent a dove, he said. After the doves were gone, Mrs. Dole raised her hand again and a rocket went flying in the air over the school and it exploded in a million different directions. The next thing we knew, the sky was filled with fireworks. It was cool. Where did your mom get? Run a fireworks, said Ryan. At the end of the fireworks show, we heard this huge roar in the sky. We thought it was a hurricane or something, but it was six jet planes zoomed over the school in formation. It was awesome. I had to hold on and fly on my head. Where did your mom rent a Blue Angels fly over? Said Ryan. See, I told you, my mom goes overboard. I didn't know what he was talking about. His mom didn't fall out of a boat or anything. Oh, but it doesn't matter. Just because jet planes flew away, Mr. Klutz got on stage to make a speech. Second graders, he said, life is about challenges. Early in the school year, I challenged you to read a million pages, and you did. So I had to dress up in a gorilla suit. I challenged you to do a million math problems, and you did. So I had to kiss a pig. I challenged you to write a million spelling words, and you did. So I had to pogo stick down Main Street in a turkey costume. Finally, I challenged you to get the highest reading score in the country, and you did. So I had to paint my head orange. You always met my challenges, and now I have one last challenge for you. What is it? Somebody yelled. A few kids line up in an orderly fashion and come on stage for your diplomas. I will let you throw your caps in the air. All right, throwing stuff is fun. That's the first rule of being a kid. At school, grown-ups are consistently telling us we're not allowed to throw stuff. It was time for the big moment. Finally, we were going to get our diplomas and throw our caps in the air and eat cake. All we had lined up next to the stage, Mr. Klupps read our names one by one, and Mrs. Dole handed each of us a diploma. The parents were tripping over each other trying to take pictures. Congratulations, Mrs. Doyle hollered after she handed out the last diploma. You're officially third graders. Yippee! We were I'd been waiting all year for this final moment. Finally, I was allowed to throw something. At school, I took off my cap and winged it as high as I could. I couldn't believe in a million years what happened next. See them throwing up their graduation caps? Let's see what happens next. Chapter 10, Throwing Up. I threw my cap like a frisbee really high and far. Then, like a frisbee, it caught wind and curved back towards me. I thought it might hit the stage, but instead it hit the bowl that held the eternal fire. The bowl fell off its stand onto the ground. My cap caught fire and everybody started freaking out. Quick, somebody get a fire extinguisher, Mr. Clutch yelled. Mrs. Joel went running for the fire extinguisher. Meanwhile, the wind whipped up the flames and sparks all around. Next thing we knew, congratulations, graduate banner was on fire. Forget the fire extinguisher, said Mr. Glutz. Call the fire department. The banner was whipping around in the wind, and soon it didn't say congratulations, graduates anymore. All it said was rat dates because the rest had burned up. Here's a picture. See him running around with the flames going everywhere. Everybody was freaking out because there were sparks flying over the place. Some sparks were falling in the hay in the petting zoo. Excuse me, I said to Emily. What do you want, H.A.? Emily asked. She sounded annoyed. I just wanted to let you know you're on fire. It was true. Somehow a spark had landed on Emily's gown and the ground had gone up in flames. Emily freaked out and started running around. Now, what did they learn from their officer about fire? Do you remember what they're supposed to do? Well, she was. Help! I'm on fire, she screamed. Somebody shouted, Stop, drop, and roll. Emily stopped, dropped, and rolled. But the only problem was that she rolled right onto the table holding the cake. Here she is rolling onto the table with the cake. Em- the table toppled over and the cake slid off and landed right on top of Emily. Good news was the cake put out the fire. The bad news was our cake was ruined. 5 second rule, I shouted, and a bunch of us ran over and grabbed chunks of the cake off the playground before 5 seconds were up. It was great. Meanwhile, the hay in the petting zoo ignited. The cows and the chickens and grows started mooing and squawking and freaking out. One of the cows knocked down the wooden fence, and soon animals were running all over the playground. You should have been there. It was a real Kodak moment. But nobody was taking pictures because all the parents were too busy trying to avoid being trampled by the goats and cows. See them running? Remain calm, screamed Mrs. Doyle as she ran around, spraying the fire extinguisher. Run for your life, shouted Neil, the nude kid, as the goat chased him across the playground. I was wondering if third grade would be canceled if the school burned down, but it doesn't matter. As soon as there was a siren coming down the street, the fire truck pulled off, and Officer Spence hopped off. He attached a hose to the hydrant and sprayed water everywhere. Everybody got soaked. I thought it was over, but in the middle of the playground, I saw Andrea's mom and Ryan's mom yelling at each other. This is your fault, Andrea's mom shouted. You and your stupid graduation. How was I supposed to know that somebody would knock over the eternal flame? Ryan's mom shouted back. Next thing we knew, the two PTA moms were wrestling each other on the ground, pulling each other's hair. And we got to see it live and in person. See them wrestling. See, said Andrea, I told you PTA presidents get assassinated. Your mom is trying to kill Ryan's mom so she can become president. Mr. Clucks broke up the fight. He told us to line up near Mrs. Daisy. Some of the parents went to round up the animals. Mrs. Daisy didn't look very good. Her hair was messy. I don't feel very well. I think I need to sit. But as Mrs. Daisy never got a chance to finish her sentence because at that very moment, the most amazing thing in the world happened. Mrs. Daisy fainted, passing out and making out. Me and the guys caught Mrs. Daisy before she hit the ground. Her eyes closed and she rolled like a limp, wet rag doll. Wake up, Ryan shouted. Wake up. She can't hear you, said Neil. Here she's fainting. That's their second grade teacher. Is she dead? I asked. She just fainted, Arlo, Andrea said. Whenever a girl faints in the movie, somebody slaps her in the face and wakes her up. You should slap her, AJ, said Michael. I'm not slapping Mrs. Daisy, I said. I'll get kicked out of school. Why don't you slap her? I'm not slapping her, said Michael. You're the one who thought of giving her bonbons. She probably, why she fainted. You should slap her. You should slap her, I shouted. No, you slap her. Tell you what, I finally said. Let's both slap her. Me and Michael were about to slap Daisy when Mrs. Mackey came running over to us. We decided to let him slap her, but he didn't. Holding a wet handkerchief, he held it against Mrs. Daisy's forehead. Give her air, he shouted. It didn't make any sense because none of us had any air to give her. Who comes round with air? Where would we get air anyway? Renting air? This is your fault, Arlo, Andrea said. You knocked over the eternal flame. They'll probably make you repeat second grade for this. Mr. Klutz told us to throw our caps up in the air. I didn't mean to knock over the eternal flame. Why do I get blamed for everything? Mr. Officer Spence came rushing over to us. What happened? She fainted, said Mr. Mackey. It's because she ate so many bonbons, Andrea told Officer Spence. She got fatter and fatter. I bet all the sugar made her pass out. Then Officer Spence did the most amazing thing in the whole world. He leaned over and kissed Mrs. Daisy on the lips right in front of her husband. Ew, I said. They're making out. Mr. Mackey, are you going to let Officer Spence kiss your wife? You should punch him in the nose. That's what guys in the movies do when they catch somebody kissing their wife. He's giving her mouth to mouth resuscitation, dumbhead, said Andrea. I didn't know what mouth to mouth resuscitation was, but it looked a lot like kissing to me. I was trying to think of something mean to say to Andrea when Mrs. Daisy opened her eyes. Where am I? You're on the playground, said Officer Spence. You're doing fine. Did you eat a lot of bonbons? No, I gave most of them away. Then how did you get so fat? I asked. Because we're going to have a baby, said Mr. Mackey. What? The perfect baby name. Mr. Mackey told us that Mrs. Daisy is going to have a baby in the fall, and she was waiting for the right moment to tell us the big news. That's why you had a doctor's appointment, said Andrea, and that's why you're moving to a bigger house, said Michael, and that's why you're knitting and trying to eat healthier, said Emily. And that's why you fainted, I said. That's right, said Mrs. Daisy. The girls all were excited and giggly because girls get excited and giggly when they find out somebody's going to have a baby. Nobody knows why. They crowded around to hug Mrs. Daisy, touch her stomach, and argue over whether the baby would be a girl or a boy. Next, the girls started thinking up baby names because that's what you're supposed to do when you find out somebody's having a baby. The girls decided the baby would be named Michelle. What about you guys? Said Mr. Mackey. What do you think the baby should be named? I looked around the firefighter hosing off the petting zoo, and then I came up with the best baby name in the whole world. Hydrant, I suggested. Hydrant, somebody shouted. I said that Hydrant would be a great name for the baby because it would be antique. There was probably no other kid in the world named Hydrant. Besides, Hydrant was the perfect name because the only things baby could do was pee, sort of like a hydrant. All in all, I thought graduation went pretty well, except that I knocked over the eternal flame. Emily caught fire. The petting zoo animals escaped. And the ant school almost burned down. But stuff like that happens at elementary school. Maybe I shouldn't have thrown my cap up in the air. Maybe we'll get another cake, and maybe the parents will be able to round up the cows and goats and chickens. Maybe Ryan's mom will stop jumping out of boats, and maybe Andrea's mom will become PTA president, and maybe Officer Spence will stop kissing married women. Maybe Ryan will stop hiding under his desk whenever his mom is around. Maybe Mrs. Daisy and Mr. Mackey will name their baby Hydrant. Maybe September, everybody will forget what happened at graduation. Maybe they'll be able to talk Mr. Klutz into letting us have another graduation at the end of third grade, but it won't be easy. And that is the end of our book. And you can check out other books in this series. There are 21 books in the My Weird School Day series. It's all about AJ and all of his wacky teachers.